A killer is playing a deadly game of chess, but instead of pieces, he's using human lives. Detectives first dismissed the scribbled notes found at each crime scene as the ravings of a madman. Then, one investigator, a chess enthusiast, noticed something chilling. The messages weren't random. They were moves from a famous match, played out murder by murder. Now, with every victim, the killer advances his strategy, and if the detectives can't predict his next move, another person will die. The first victim was found in a quiet apartment near the city's chess district. There were no signs of a break-in, just a man in his 40s lying dead on the floor. On his chest was a sheet of paper covered with strange codes, letters and numbers that seemed meaningless. Detectives thought it was just the killer's weird signature, but Officer Dawson, who played chess on weekends, recognized the marks. They were chess moves, NF3, E5. At first, he kept it to himself. It felt too strange to be real. By the time he told the lead detective, another person had already been murdered. When investigators looked closer at the first crime scene, they realized the killer had arranged objects with purpose. A lamp stood exactly where a rook would be on a chessboard. Books were placed in positions that matched bishops' paths. Only after a chess historian studied the photos did the truth emerge. The killer was copying an old 1858 chess match between Wilhelm Steinitz and Augustus Mongradian. The second victim, a schoolteacher, was found in her car near the library. She held another note with the next moves of the game. Her throat had been cut quickly and precisely, like a pawn being taken off the board. Detectives noticed both victims had something in common. Their jobs required strict rules and order. The accountant followed tax codes. The teacher enforced classroom rules. Rushing to stay ahead, police checked the site of the next move in the historic game, a plaza where a night sacrifice had once been played. But they were too late. Fresh blood stained a park bench, and another note was waiting. The killer wasn't picking random targets. Each victim was chosen to represent a chess piece, their deaths replaying a famous match from history, one move at a time. At first, detectives thought the notes were nothing more than normal chess moves, but Detective Maria Ruiz noticed something odd while going through the photos. Some of the symbols had tiny changes. A slash through the X in NX E5, a double underline under QD2. These weren't normal chess marks. The police brought in a code expert. He found that each of these little changes connected to details from the victims' lives. For example, the accountant's case number matched the slashed X. The teacher's classroom number matched the underlined queen move. Handwriting experts studied 12 of the notes. The letters were clean and steady, written with a left hand, but with the kind of precision you'd expect from an architect's blueprint, not from someone rushing. The killer had clearly practiced these moves many times, copying them perfectly before leaving them at the crime scenes. Detectives built a chart to compare the victims' jobs with the chess pieces they were assigned. Accountants and office workers were pawns, replaceable, many of them. Teachers and nurses were bishops, guiding diagonally through communities. The third victim, a fire captain, was a rook. His body was left by a firehouse, exactly where the rook would control a file on the board. The killer wasn't just replaying a chess game. He was rewriting it to match his own twisted view of society. The big breakthrough came with the seventh victim, a hospital administrator. His note said BXH7+, which means bishop takes H7 check, but the plus sign was circled. Investigators realized the victim worked on the 7th floor, in room H7. Suddenly, it was clear. The killer was using the city itself as his chessboard. Street addresses, floor numbers, even office doors. All were squares in his deadly game. The team pieced together the rules. A slash through a symbol meant the victim was close to retirement. Underlines marked people with authority. A circle meant the target worked in a building with floors or numbered rooms. This wasn't just chess anymore. Each move was also a message. Every killing was the killer's way of recording what he thought was wrong with society. To him, people weren't human beings. They were pieces in his private ledger of order and punishment. Detectives called in Leonid Petrov, a retired chess grandmaster who had spent 40 years studying old matches. He recognized the pattern at once. The murders were following the famous 1927 game between Capablanca and Spielmann, a match remembered for its aggressive pawn attacks on the queen's side. But Petrov noticed something unusual. In the sixth killing, the killer had changed the order of 2 pawn moves. This wasn't random. It meant the murderer wasn't simply copying the game from memory. He was probably looking at an old score sheet or even a rare chess magazine. The police pinned a map of the city to the wall and marked each murder scene with colored pins for the chess pieces. Petrov explained that the locations lined up with public transport routes, just like open files on a chessboard. Other neighborhoods remained untouched, as if guarded by invisible defenders. When they checked those safe areas against city records, they found landmarks tied to chess history. A park named after Morphy Morphe, a restaurant called Endgame. The killer had turned the city into his own living chessboard. Using the 1927 game, Petrov predicted 3 possible next moves. One of them involved a night sacrifice near downtown, but he warned the detectives. The original game contained a mistake on move 23. A strong player would correct it. 12 hours later, a junior architect was found dead beneath the Wells Street Bridge, exactly where Petrov had predicted. His briefcase contained a note with the corrected move, NXE6, instead of the blunder NF3. It was clear now. The killer wasn't just replaying history, he was improving it. At the scene, investigators noticed another clue. 6 cigarette butts laid out in a line, white filters alternating with brown. Petrov saw the meaning immediately. It represented the squares controlled by the knight that had just been sacrificed. More importantly, it was a signal. The next step would be a queen sacrifice, the most devastating moment in the original game. The likely location pointed to the financial district, home to many female executives. Detectives quietly increased patrols near the glass towers, knowing that if they failed, the killer's next move would be his boldest yet. What chess masters grimly call a desperate defense. The autopsies revealed a chilling pattern. Victims treated as pawns. Ordinary workers and clerks were killed quickly, usually with a single stab or gunshot, just like pawns casually sacrificed early in a chess match. But the woman chosen as the Black Queen, a powerful CEO, was made to suffer. The killer drowned her in a bathtub tiled like a chessboard, then strangled her with her own pearl necklace, arranging the pearls like captured pieces. Her death was long, brutal, and staged to show her importance on the board. Forensics offered little else. No fingerprints, no hairs, only the carefully placed notes. Investigators did notice faint impressions from gloves on the victim's clothing, showing the killer positioned the bodies with exact care, as if he were setting chess pieces back in place. The notes always rested neatly on the chest, angled the same way, like trophies laid beside a real chessboard. Grandmaster Petrov studied the pattern again and grew uneasy. In the original 1927 match, Spielmann had blundered and lost his queen too soon, but here the killer had changed the play, assassinating the CEO in a way that followed perfect chess theory. He wasn't just copying history, he was correcting it, rewriting the game into what he thought it should have been. Behavior experts suggested the murderer must identify with Spielmann, the loser of the match. By killing, he was fixing mistakes from the past, erasing failure piece by piece. Digging into the victims' pasts revealed more links. The pawns worked at companies that had laid off staff during recent economic slumps. The bishops were teachers from schools that ran chess programs. The queen, the CEO, had once sat on the board of a company that forced a smaller rival into bankruptcy. Right around the time the Capablanca Spielmann game was erased from a local chess club's archives, detectives tracked down an elderly man who had belonged to that same chess club. He remembered a gifted teenage player, obsessed with Spielmann's style, who had been expelled for cheating. That youth had even petitioned for the 1927 game to be reclassified as a Spielmann win, but was denied. The years matched up perfectly with the killer's likely age today. This wasn't just about murder. This was revenge. Every death was a way to rewrite that match. Spielmann's defeat transformed into victory, one body at a time. Detectives knew they were closing in on the most dangerous part of the match. Grandmaster Petrov pointed to move 28 in the old Capablanca Spielmann game, the moment Spielmann sacrificed his queen. He'll replay it, Petrov warned, tracing the move on the board. But where history showed a messy mistake, our killer will make it dramatic. Police built a list of possible queen targets, powerful female executives whose companies had cost people their jobs. 3 stood out: a bank president who closed several branches, a tech CEO who replaced factory workers with machines, and a hotel owner who had cut union staff for cheaper contractors. Surveillance teams were sent to guard all 3. But then Detective Ruiz spotted something strange. The killer hadn't acted out move 27, which in the original game was a rook's defensive move. He skipped it, Ruiz said. No, Petrov replied after studying the sequence. He's not skipping, he's removing it. He's stripping away the defenses to make the queen's sacrifice unavoidable. That night, police received an anonymous tip. Someone had broken into the old Metropolitan Chess Club. Inside, the walls were spray-painted in red with the notation 28, BXH6+. In the center stood a life-sized chessboard with 12 mannequins. One mannequin, dressed in a business suit, lay decapitated, its head placed beside a bishop figure. Other mannequins, dressed as security guards, stood in the pawn positions. Forensics tied the paint to a hardware store near the site of the first murder. Even more chilling, the club's dusty trophies had been rearranged to display only awards from 1927, the year of the Capablanca-Spielmann match. Behind one plaque, detectives found a Polaroid photo of their own team examining the accountant's body at the first crime scene. The killer had been there, watching from the very beginning. The setup wasn't just a warning, it was a plan. The bishop's placement on the board pointed directly toward the financial district, where all three queen candidates worked. But there was a key detail. The mannequin's neck had been cut with a surgeon's scalpel, clean and precise, not like the clumsy blunder of the original 1927 match. The killer wasn't just replaying the game anymore, he was perfecting it. Police quietly shifted focus to hospital records, looking for surgeons with chess backgrounds. The realization sank in. The killer wasn't simply predicting their moves, he was counting on them to play right into his hands. Grandmaster Petrov laid out the chess notations on the briefing table, moving evidence markers like pawns. He's stopped following the 1927 game, Petrov said. Here, where Spielmann agreed to a draw, our killer has written BG4+. The bishop move opened new attacks that didn't exist in the original match. Petrov tapped the photo of the vandalized chess club. This wasn't just for show. He's showing us his revised endgame. Detectives realized the killer had been changing the game all along, steering it toward a conclusion only he understood. Then, a note appeared in Detective Ruiz's case files. 2 words written on chess tournament paper. Your move. The handwriting matched the killer's previous notes, but the ink was fresh. Behavioral analysts warned the killer now saw the investigators as part of the game, not just bystanders. The team noticed a connection. Petrov had judged a youth chess tournament where one of the earlier victims had taught. Many detectives on the case also had links to chess clubs or the social circles of the victims. Junior Detective Carter, a former state chess champion, pointed out something strange. The bishop move doesn't fit, he said. The original game already had that bishop captured. Cross-checking upcoming events, he found a perfect match. A hospital fundraiser in the old Capablanca ballroom, crowded, with security focused on donor privacy. It was the ideal place for the killer to strike. The team sent plainclothes officers, watching exits, scanning attendees, and checking staff credentials. Nothing happened at the event, but that night, Detective Ruiz returned home to find her living room chessboard rearranged to match the killer's next move. Forensics confirmed the pieces had been handled with gloves and placed with millimeter precision. The board matched the layout of the fundraiser, proof the killer had been there, unnoticed, studying their surveillance. A single black queen stood just outside the board near Ruiz's armchair. Under it, crime scene techs found tiny metal filings, the same alloy used in surgical scalpels. The message was clear. The killer wasn't just predicting their moves, he was controlling them. Every step the detectives took had already been calculated. On the board, he was 6 moves ahead, with Ruiz's queen already in position. At the morning briefing, Detective Carter suggested a bold move. He wanted to leak their predicted next attack, a night sacrifice near the financial district, to the news. Grandmaster Petrov warned against it. He might change his pattern, or strike faster than you can respond, he said. But with no other leads and more victims piling up, the captain approved the plan. By noon, every major news outlet was reporting that police expected an attack matching move 31 of the historic game. 2 days passed without a single incident. Then a courier arrived at the precinct, delivering a chessboard addressed to Carter. The white pieces formed the predicted move, but the black pieces showed the killer's response, an unexpected pawn advance. A note read, "You learn quickly." Surveillance in the financial district found nothing unusual. The killer hadn't taken the bait, but he had sent a clear message. He was watching. Forensics traced the courier to an abandoned mailbox 3 blocks from the old chess club. The board had no fingerprints, but microscopic analysis revealed traces of a rare lubricant used in high-end chess clocks. Only 17 of that model had been sold in the state over 5 years. After background checks, they eliminated 13 owners. The remaining 4 were a retired chess coach, 2 tournament organizers, and an orthopedist named Richard Vale, a former collegiate chess champion. Meanwhile, Petrov studied the new chess position. The killer's pawn move created a passed pawn, one that could become a queen if it reached the other side. He's changed goals, Petrov warned. Before, he pursued material advantage. Now, he's playing for promotion. This meant the killer might start targeting people who represented upward mobility rather than just powerful figures. The breakthrough came when an evidence technician opened a locked storage drawer and found a chessboard rearranged overnight. Only 6 people had access: 3 detectives, 2 forensic analysts, analysts, and the precinct janitor, a part-time chess tutor who had quit competitive play decades earlier after losing a championship on time pressure. Surveillance showed nobody had entered the locker. The new board displayed a famous endgame setup, the Lucina position, teaching how to promote a pawn against weak defense. The message was clear. The killer had infiltrated their operation. He wasn't just predicting their moves anymore. He had become part of the board itself. Grandmaster Petrov set up his pocket chessboard and pointed to the last sequence. "He's leading us to Morphy's mate," he said. "Checkmate in 3. His queen and bishop will trap the king." The detectives realized the pattern matched the lead detective's fiancée, a corporate attorney who chaired charity boards. She fit the killer's queen perfectly. The team rushed to move her to a safe house, only to find a chess notation taped inside the medicine cabinet, QXF7#. Forensics confirmed it had been placed there 4 days earlier, before they even chose the location. Every move the detectives had made, every plan and prediction had been anticipated. The killer's apparent mistakes were bait, tricks to steer the investigation exactly where he wanted. Records showed the janitor had worked at the precinct since the first murder, watching files, listening to briefings, and learning every procedure. His past chess tournament losses lined up with the timing of corporate layoffs at the firms he later targeted, companies that had hurt his father decades ago. Detective Carter went alone to the old chess club after studying the janitor's employment history. Inside, he found Richard Vale polishing trophies with surgical gloves. "Spielmann should have won," Vale said, not looking up. He told Carter how he had found his father's suicide note next to a newspaper clipping about the 1927 match, a foreman who admired the underdog grandmaster. The game was perfect until move 23. One hesitation ruined everything. He slid a bishop across the board, placing it next to Carter's position. SWAT teams stormed the building as Vale completed the final moves. He offered his wrists for handcuffs, whispering Zugzwang, a chess term for when any move only makes your position worse. In interrogation, Vale explained that every victim represented someone who had blundered in his father's life. Employers, teachers, civic leaders, people whose decisions had caused pain that echoed the 1927 match's fatal hesitation. At his apartment, investigators found walls covered in chess notation. Each murder was plotted alongside the original game. A worn chess manual lay open to the Lucina position, with margins filled with corporate layoff statistics. On the final page was a Polaroid of Carter's fiancée entering the safe house, circled in red with QAUK7#, the exact square and move where Vale's father had lost his last tournament 53 years earlier. In Vale's mind, the match was complete. Every piece had fallen exactly where he calculated. The detectives realized, horrifyingly, that they had been pawns in someone else's perfected endgame. The case of the chessboard killer showed how a brilliant mind could turn strategy into murder. Even years after Richard Vale's arrest, criminologists study his notebooks filled with chess moves and notes on his victims. Detectives kept the files open, examining how Vale had manipulated their own procedures as part of his deadly game. The original Capablanca Spielmann chessboard is still in evidence, with tiny traces of blood on some squares where Vale had recreated moves between murders. New officers reviewing the case often overlook the real danger. It wasn't just the killings, it was how Vale turned careful planning, logic, and rules into a weapon. The chessboards remain set, the pieces untouched, waiting for someone to truly understand the deadly cost of thinking like a grandmaster, and how a perfect game can become a perfect crime.